Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Adventures Travel Club television show. Betty and I are here in the Uppsala Cathedral looking at the crown jewels, the Swedish crown jewels. You want to polish those things, Betty?
No, I wouldn't mind polishing them. Not too bad. But see, they don't have all the intricacies of the jewels that we saw in England, the Queen's jewels there. And they don't have, where's the stones?
They were in there.
Not that many, though.
Yeah,
huh?
well, there wasn't very much light in there, so it was kind of hard to see. But yeah, there were some precious stones in there. It was a small display,
Yeah.
not like what the English had. But I think the Swedes were a little more sedate, probably. We see here a picture of the Holy Father in 1989 when he visited the cathedral here, and also they had in 1968 they had the World Council of Churches. And there's the outside door, and of course we now are going to board back on the bus again and go through the rain as we kind of leave the city of Uppsala. And I thought this was just a beautiful setting for a college town or college
university. Yeah,
really nice.
And they attract a lot of students from foreign countries there too. So they must have a very good curriculum.
I would imagine that they do, because for years and years I've always heard of the university at Uppsala.
But if they had a football team, you'd have to root for Uppsala.
Yeah, I can
maybe
see
they do. Who knows?
What the Yell Leaders would do on that one, huh? That'd be pretty
fun.
Right. So we are going to leave Uppsala, and we're going to head toward Stockholm, and the capital, of course, of Sweden. But here is I just had to take some shots here, and a lot of these buildings, of course, are university buildings, which are located all over the city. So they're not just in one spot, but they are all over the city.
And Marv, do they wear bikes? Wear bikes.
Do they wear bikes? I don't think so.
I don't mean that.
The buses that you can see here are the local transportation. It's a big, originally company called Svebus, a Swedish company originally, that bought up a lot of the smaller local bus lines to make one huge monopoly. But they found that it was very difficult to get enough money out of the different smaller routes. So when a Scottish company came over and offered to buy the whole company, the whole Svebus company, they accepted. So they are now gobbled up by a Scottish company called Stagecoach. So we're driving around in Scottish-owned buses here.
A Scottish stagecoach. Well,
Isn't that
that's something,
funny?
isn't it, huh?
I
I would not
so.
have thought of that, had you? We see here that there's a little flower stand over here, a couple of them. In Europe, they usually have, for most of the communities, they have a specific day or maybe 2 days out of the week where they will have an outdoor market like that, sort of a farmer's market, as it were. Today was sort of a rainy day, and probably it was an off day, so that maybe just the person or persons there that had the little stands were there. And you find that
Took the
sometimes.
day off.
Yeah, well, everybody else took the day off, but they were there selling, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, again, we are now heading towards Stockholm, as you see, in the rain, and as we're getting a little bit closer, a little bit closer, and a little bit closer.
It's the capital of Sweden, and situated very beautifully, as I say, between the Lake Mälaren, which then is fresh water, and the Baltic Sea with its contents of salts. And you'll find right downtown locks, so that boats going from the lake can then be transferred down to sea level and continue out into the Baltic Sea. And outside of Stockholm we have the beautiful Stockholm archipelago, which to many people is paradise, especially sailing people. During the summertime, the whole of this area is full of sailing ships, white sails everywhere, and people docking on the little islands. You can take an excursion boat out to the islands. As I take it, you didn't bring your sailboat along.
No.
Tomorrow morning, as I say, at 9 o'clock tomorrow, you will be taken on a city tour by Göran. Will be still driving the bus, and my colleague Elisabeth will be doing the city tour. She's a local guide in Stockholm. Because during the summertime, Swedes have got this nice thing A lot of offices close an hour earlier. People work a little more during the winter months so that they, during the summer months, can leave. Instead of 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they go home at 4 o'clock.
Otherwise it looks just like home.
Otherwise it looks just like home. Traffic jams, huh? To go out to restaurants, they'd get little coupons and they could go out and get a very cheap meal at lunchtime, even in the deluxe restaurants that otherwise would charge you quite a lot. So you will find restaurants where the evening prices are quite high, but the lunch prices are very reasonable, and you get a good meal, you get salad and you get a hot dish and a non-alcoholic beverage, and coffee usually is included too, for around between 50 and 60 kronas, and that's a pretty good offer. Do you see the 5 white high-rise buildings ahead of us? This is the new shopping area. We'll be getting a little closer to that. These are all office buildings, few apartments, but mostly offices, and all on the ground floor and sub-ground floor, underground, they have shops galore. They've built a whole new, here's that express train that I'll be taking later on, goes across from Stockholm to Gothenburg. Usually it takes about 5 to 6 hours. This train does the distance in 3 hours and 15 minutes. The central station here to the left, which is also now the terminal for the buses from all over Sweden and Europe. So this monstrosity of a pink building to the left is the new terminal building. Coming across now, going across the railroad tracks and coming down to one of the oldest shopping streets, originally the fine street in Stockholm. You can see one of the towers ahead of us. It's a twin tower building with a bridge across the road, and the street straight ahead of us is called Kungsgatan, the King Street. And of course, it being a big city, we've got Burger King and 7-Eleven here. It's almost like home. If you look to the left, you can see one of the entrances to the subway station. The subway station is called the T-Line. And T-Centralen is the biggest of the stations. It's right underneath the central station, Central Railroad Station. You can hop on a train. It's one stop only from your hotel and to this station right downtown. If you don't want to walk, if you don't want to wear your feet out just getting into this part. But the main central station is here to the right, the old train station. If you look at the street, it doesn't look as though it's rained very much right here. Strange. If you look out as we continue straight ahead, if you look out to the right, you can see the tower of the town hall building. You'll be visiting the town hall of Stockholm tomorrow on the city tour. This red brick building with the gold dome with the 3 crowns on it. Coming up, you can see a street sign saying Gamla stan. Now, who was Stan? You're wondering how? Stan means the town or the city, and it means the old city. And this is where we have some of the oldest buildings that are left. They have torn down most of them in Stockholm and built modern buildings, but on this specific island they still have the old buildings left. You may want to walk across there for dinner if you have a lot of energy, otherwise there are restaurants around the hotel. But it's a rather unique place. You'll be going there on the City Tour too. Ahead of us you've got a building which has a semicircular back to it with a modern section on top, and beyond that a balcony with a flag. This is the Parliament building. All of this you'll be seeing again tomorrow.
Looks really good, this small building with the modern section on top. It's good. Straight ahead.
And the body of water that we're seeing here is still part of the Lake Mälaren, but it's coming to a point where it will be joining the Baltic Sea.
Yeah. Now the storm going to follow us, or is it passed over this part?
Take a look to the right and the left as we cross this street. You've got one of the main walking streets, again a shopping street, and the bridge going across to the old town. There are several bridges going across to the old town as it's an island. But Drottninggatan, the Queen Street, was the walking street here. And now coming up to a rather pompous building, which is the Opera. And if you look to the right, you can see the Royal Palace. You'll be seeing it as we turn around the corner here. They have recently restored all the windows of the Royal Palace. It took several years, but they took down every single window frame and restored it, repainted it, put back the windows. And at last now they've uncovered the palace, because it's otherwise sections of it have been constantly covered with netting, looking like a piece of modern art.
Ja.
So here you get a good view of the Royal Palace with the Royal flag flying. The pleasure boats, the sightseeing boats out to the right in front of the Grand Hotel, and the Opera to the right now. As we continue upwards a bit, you'll be able to see a red church with a green roof. That's right at the corner of the King's Garden, Kungsträdgården, where we have a whole park area with little restaurants lined up on the side of it, and little stalls selling kebabs and sandwiches and stuff like that. Into the right here we have one of the indoor shopping centres in 3 floors, 2 above ground and 1 below, Gallerian, and of course you can see there's a little underground station there too. Anyway, you see the letter T means that this is an underground station. And we're going to cross the Queen Street again, Drottninggatan, the walking street, and we've got the Town Hall Square straight ahead of us with the 3 crowns, the symbol of Sweden. Stockholm is split up in different sections. You've got different parts of the city, and where you are is called Kungsholmen. You can see it on the sign above us here. Kungsholmen meaning the King's Island. On the left, we've got the old brewery, today office buildings. And this whole section of the city is called the southern part, Söder. A lot of artists live there. It's like the bohemian quarter of Stockholm. And we're coming into the more mundane quarters. This is where the nicer, older apartment flats are situated.
De är
strax i sitt kvarter nu.
Ja, just det.
Så att gatan nu vid svängen ner.
Ja.
Det här kvarteret ligger alltså en massa
Alla restaurangerna, ja just det.
Svängen nu så har du Bernthagen.
If you take a look around here, this is the area that's closest to our hotel with all the restaurants. You can see banks, apotek, chemist, little pubs and bars. And the old town hall, the old city hall here. You're also very close to the police headquarters. Nice to know, safe. But on the other hand, we'll still not guarantee that they'll not try to break into the bus. So keep in mind, bring everything with you. Do not leave anything on board the bus. Just a little while longer and I'll get the room numbers.
Well, we're starting up here at the King's Island, Kungsholmen. Kungsholmen. And just as in Stockholm, Holme, the Swedish word, always means a small island. So this must also have been a small island originally. And the name of this one goes back to one of our kings. He was very jealous that we had a Queen's Island, Drottningholm, with a palace for the Queen since the 15th century. And he only had palaces that he needed to share with queens. Isn't that unfair? So he took this one, wanted to build a palace, but ran out of money because we were at war. And the name then only lingers on from this idea of his. And it became first the island where all the craftsmen and the carpenters of the old town moved in. Sorry, we have to help each other here in the front as well. And then it became a residential area. You can look at most of the houses. The houses here are not particularly old. The eldest ones you will find on the King's Island are from the 18th, end of 18th, beginning of 19th century. And for Stockholm standard, that is not very old, because up on the southern island you have houses from the 16th century and also in the old town and onwards. The King's Island, I said, being a residential area, and in the inner city we are about 700 to 750,000 inhabitants, and with the suburbs we're 1.5 million. And I think we're a bit odd, we Stockholmers. I live in the inner city, so I think I'm entitled to criticize myself. Because in Europe, if you look at the cities, as inner cities have grown, so has also the definition of inner cities, but not in Stockholm. We still look upon the inner city within the old customs boundaries from the 17th, 18th century. And I think this is due to the fact, this is what I've thought out myself, might not at all be true, but I think it has to do with the fact that what you don't really need to do is what very often becomes elegant to do. And we are not very many Swedes, we're 8.5 million, and we're one of the longest countries in Europe. So 29 Swedes can share between them a whole square kilometer. I'll come back to that. Here now, on the right, you have the lower court of Stockholm, opened in 1935. And which means that with 29 Swedes, we could actually among us share and live in houses with nice properties around us. What we most certainly do not need to do is sit in each other's lap. And that is why I think it's much more elegant to live in the inner city and crumble up with other people. And of course then the prices of the rents and the houses, flats in the inner city, are more expensive than if you were to go out in the suburbs. A 4-room flat in Stockholm and such to be obtained on a rental basis from 7,000 to 15,000 Swedish crowns a month. A dollar is nearly 8 crowns nowadays. And if you would like to buy that one, it would cost somewhere from 800,000 to 2 million. Depending on where you have it. I mean, round the corner here is of course a bit less expensive than at the water's edge, just as anywhere else. Lake here is the 3rd biggest lake in Sweden, a fresh water lake, and we count upon as a total having 96,000 lakes in Sweden. There is a big difference between the lake system of Finland because they have it all in the southern part, so to say, in one place, while ours are dotted out a bit all over the country. Which is of course an advantage in another way. Wherever you have your summer house in Sweden, it is not all too far away from a lake that you can go and swim in, which is very, very nice.
Well, as you can tell, we have our new guide now, and we have finally arrived at the City Hall.
Well, the City Hall then here is built in a short period of time, 1912 to 23, and the style here is called National Romantic. And here it is actually a mixture of 3 different architectonical styles due to the architect's education and his study tours. And we say that the bricks here and the small tower, the high tower, that you'll see from the outside later on is typical medieval architecture. And of course, but not only Scandinavia, nearly all the way to Hanover in Germany, built with brick during the Middle Ages. Then we have the North Italian influence, which is a Renaissance influence. The house is built around 2 piazzas, as they would say. You have the outer courtyard, and you have this one that we are standing in. Then you have the staircase as well, that resembles very much to the one you'll find in the Doge Palace in Venice. And then you have the North African influence. Best to be seen from the outside, because the architect had made study tours to Tunisia and Morocco. And as we go round here to the other island, you'll see the gilded statues, the half moon, all of that on top of the house, which is more North African than anything. And in here, the narrow windows and the statues on top of it. This was for the first one seen here. And this is during the Nobel Prize banquet, where they eat. Eating down here and dancing up in the Golden Room. Just quickly to the Nobel Prizes. The Nobel Prizes and anything that deals with them is regulated through Nobel's testimony. And he died on the 10th of December 1896. So what we're actually doing is celebrating his death day on the 10th of December. And one prize, the Peace Prize, is given out in Norway. And the reason is historical, because in 1896, Sweden and Norway hung together in a personal union, the Swedes say. The Norwegians say they were occupied, but that's the way history goes, you know. And we were kicked out there in 1905. But since Nobel had written, 96, that the Peace Prize should be handed out with the brother people, that is what will go for eternity. And they're also given out in the order they mention: physics, chemistry, medicine, literature, and then Peace Prize. Maybe you notice there's one missing. No, not that one. We have a new one, which is no Nobel Prize, most certainly not. It is very casually referred to as a Nobel Prize, but it is the prize in economics. And that is not a Nobel Prize, because the money does not come out of the estate of Alfred Nobel. Firstly handed out as well 1968. The money comes from the Swedish National Bank, and when they hand it out, you know, it's easy if you know Swedish, they say the prize in economics in remembrance of Alfred Nobel. So that one can never become a Nobel Prize. But it's on the as much as a Nobel Prize, nearly $1 million last year. So if anybody would offer it to me, I'd just say thank you and off I would go. You know, it can't be that.
What currency is it offered in?
1 million, that would be dollars, because it was 7 million something last year.
Well, I've heard the story, and I can't remember all of it, why there was no Nobel Prize in mathematics.
Well, in mathematics, he was not interested in mathematics. He was a physician, chemistry man himself. Medicine, I can understand he put in, due to the fact that one of the reasons that we have the Nobel Prizes, after all, what he saw, how his invention, the dynamite, was used, and not only for the good of mankind. In literature, in last century and also in ours, this is my personal way of looking upon it. At least if I look at my father, who was born 96, literature, you should have some humanistic basis to stand on.
Well, there's a lot of interesting, I should say. And I got tongue-tied there just listening. You know, the information on the Nobel Prize. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize
a wealth of knowledge.
It certainly is. And of course, can be very proud that Mother Teresa was also a recipient of the prize. The building, I think, is absolutely marvelous. From the outside, I was a little dubious, you know, of what it was going to look like inside. But the great big salon, of course, where we were, that's where the dinner was held for the Nobel Awards. And then they have dancing upstairs in the what you call the gold room. And we're going to see that next week. We won't have a chance to see it this week. However, this is part of the chambers of where the city officials meet, and you can see there's a gallery up on that side. Sort of looks like a throne for the king, doesn't it?
Didn't it?
But Betty, weren't you excited about this ceiling? I mean, this was absolutely incredible. All the painting, and of course these open beams, the way that it was. This to me was a magnificent looking thing. Ah, this is really great.
It sort of made you think of the bridge in Lucerne, only on such a minute scale, but with the beams and the painted ceilings and stuff.
One place always reminds you of another.
You're right.
Speaking about that, we'd like to remind you about the trips that we have coming up, and Betty will give you more information on that if you give her a call at
488-7443.
And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.